Hello and welcome to this virtual information evening. This is for parents and carers of students in Year 10 and this will talk you through the work experience process. The actual work experience week is displayed there on the screen, the 26th of June to the 30th of June. So the aim of the presentation is to talk you through the work experience process. I'll talk you through the main reasons why we do the work experience week and then the whole process, including the dates and forms and information to be completed, as well as the support that students will get to help them through the process. And then the presentation finishes with some frequently asked questions. My contact details are on the screen there, as well as Mrs. Jordan, who is my colleague who helps me to contact businesses, and she's also available there to offer support. So first of all then, I just want to share with you a little bit of feedback that we had from last year's Work Experience Week, and this helps to answer the question about why is work experience important. Often students and sometimes parents and carers wonder about work experience in Year 10 and wonder, is it really necessary, given that often students don't know what job area or career they want to work in. And of course the answer to that is, well, it doesn't need to be related in any way to the job area that they would go on and work in. And the reason for that is because the work experience process in Year 10 is so valuable, because it offers students the chance to see what the work placement is like and to see what the world of work is like and to see how it's different from school. And they also gives them an opportunity to put into practice some of the softer skills or employability skills, and just basic skills that employers look for. And it's very difficult for them to show that they have these skills if they've never been in the workplace before. And on the right hand side, I just copied a little bit of feedback that students gave from last year. So some of them, you can see, learn how to use different machines, and certainly learning how to use a computer properly is an essential skill that most jobs would require a basic understanding of computer literacy. Another student found that it was really helpful for learning how to manage their stress by going into a different environment, and then other students learnt how to use other specific machines. So it actually provided students with so many skills, and not just specific skills for job areas. And for many students, it gave them a massive boost for their own self-esteem by showing them how resilient they were and how they could go into a totally different environment and actually be really, really successful. So there's so many positives and there's so many reasons why work experience is important. And I've also put on the other side of the screen a bit of the feedback that we ask each year for our employers to give us. And again, you can see some of these skills being highlighted. The communication skills, making eye contact, willingness to learn, showing that capacity to try and work independently. And a lot of our employers often not just offer students a potential apprenticeship or a summer job, or maybe even a job when they finish school with some training, but a lot of our employers send us some really wonderful feedback about how well the students actually did, and it usually focuses around their skills and the improvement that they've made with their skills. So that would be my answer to that question about, you know, why is work experience important? Why is it important that we do it in Year 10? So let's just have a look at some of the key dates for the work experience process for 2023. Well, everything's going to kick off in November with obviously the launch and the sharing of information with both students, which has been done in an assembly, and that will be supported during tutor time, and then obviously with this information evening here. And then the website will also be updated so that the information you see in the presentation can also be found and accessed at a later date via our website. Later on in November and into December, there'll be 2 PD sessions. They will both focus on preparing students for the world of work. So in one of those lessons, they'll be looking at part in the interview process and what it's like to prepare for a mock interview. We'll be offering mock interviews to all of our students on the 7th of December. These will be the interviewers will be coming in from the world of work, so that will be another opportunity to engage with real employers. And then back to the PD sessions, we'll then move on to look at what the workplace is like, and students will do some work on producing a CV. Just to be clear, the CV is not essential. They don't need the CV to be able to contact employers. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it is excellent if they can have a draft CV saved so that after the work experience process is over, they can then go back and update that CV. It's much more likely to be a more detailed CV if they have already got one saved, and then they can update it in July after they finish their week of experience in the workplace. The key date sheet that you're looking at now also just has the deadline for the placement form, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. Everything has now moved to online, so we're not dealing with any paper forms, and this is much easier for people to complete and information to be shared, and employers much prefer this way of completing the information because it takes a bit of the hard work off them, and we can complete that for them. And then any students that don't have a placement after Easter, we will obviously support them to secure a suitable placement. And then obviously the work experience week itself takes place 26th of June to the 30th of June. Let's move on to talk about the actual process itself and what the students need to do, what the employer will do, what the school will do, and then obviously how you can support it. So first of all then, we would encourage students to start making contact with employers from around about the 21st of November onwards. They don't have to do it straight away, but there are some employers who will only take or only are able to take one student, and therefore if a student is desperate to go to a particular placement, then it's obviously makes sense to do things sooner rather than later. In terms of how a student can contact a placement, clearly there are lots of ways that they can do this. Email and phone are probably the 2 easiest ways. I always encourage students that I support to do a draft email or make a draft note of the conversation that they're going to have. If they are going to phone, it's a good idea if they can have the name of the person, or at least be able to introduce themselves and to say that they're a work experience student, and to have the dates, because the most important thing for the employer is to check that they can actually take a student during those dates. So it's important that the student has all that information. The other way to make contact is just through using personal contacts that you may have. Lots of our students go to a member of the family or a family friend for their placement, so that's absolutely fine if the contacting just involves asking lots of people that you know if they might be able to offer a placement. In terms of health and safety, what we ask is that the employer provides us with confirmation that they have all of the necessary insurances in place. Most employers are employers in St Neots, and they already have a number of employees already working for them, and of course all employees are covered by this insurance. So a student on a placement then becomes an employee for matters of health and safety and will therefore be covered. But we obviously want to know that there is that relevant insurance in place. So on the placement form, which I'll talk to you about in a second, there is a box to confirm that that insurance is in place. Once the employer has confirmed they can offer the student a placement, it is at that point and not before that we would ask that the parent or carer completes the placement form. Please don't forward the link for the placement form on to the employer and ask them to complete it, because the form is written from the point of view of the parent carer, then that they need to put that information in and to then right at the end say that they give permission for the placement to go ahead, and obviously the employer can't do that. So really all you need to get from the employer is confirmation that they will take the student during that week, and then you just need to ask them that they have those insurances in place. Ideally, it would be helpful just to have the policy number so that we can be sure that there is a policy in place. If there's any problems with the employer and they say, well, we're not happy to share that information with you for whatever reason, then you can just write that in on the placement form. There's a gap, just type it in, and then we can obviously follow that up. So please don't wait for weeks and weeks and weeks. If the employer has said they'll take the student, get that placement form completed as quickly as possible, and then it gives us a bit more time to check placements. So hopefully by January, the student will be in a position where they have a placement, and then the next step is for the placement form to be completed. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to do this all electronically. The link to this form will be in the parent letter that I will send out with this, that I've sent out with this presentation. Like I said before, we don't want students to fill it in, and we don't want the employer to fill it in, because it acts as the approval that you're happy with the placement to go ahead. So it's a basic form. It'll probably take about 5 minutes to complete. Everything is fairly straightforward: the student's name, the student's form, the company they're going to, the contact person there, an email address, the insurance information, and then there's just a couple of basic questions which will be really helpful for the student. Things like, is there a dress code? Just get the employer to tell us that there's definitely fresh water available, because obviously that's important, and we just need to know the rough hours that the student will be working and roughly what they'll be doing. Again, that just really helps us to know that the placement is secure and that we're happy with that. And also it means we can issue the student with a reminder, because some students forget when it gets to June. They forget the information that the employer has told them, particularly with things like dress code and packed lunch. So there's just a couple of quick questions, but again, the employer should be able to give you that information quite quickly. So as soon as the placement is confirmed, we would ask you to complete this form, click submit, and then obviously all the information will be copied across to us. So what support will we offer to students? Well, as previously mentioned, there will be support in both the personal development lessons which are happening this half term. We'll support students to think about ways that they can find a placement. As I said, lots of students go down the route of using family contacts, but it's just as easy for the student to think about placements which are fairly close to the school, especially if they're already coming in on the school bus. They can just do the same thing and walk to the placement and then have their placement there for the week. So it's about weighing up what's practical, what's easiest, rather than beginning your search by thinking about what job do I want to do and then looking for employers. Because of course, if you want to do work in a hospital, that's not going to be possible because of age. If you want to do certain work where you're using things like chemicals, again, you can't do that because of health and safety. So personally, I think it's better to focus on what is practical and what is easier, because wherever you go, the student will pick up those skills that I mentioned at the start of the presentation. So other things that we'll also do, of course, is check in with all the contacts. Most of the employers where students will be going won't be new employers to us, because there'll be places where students have gone for many years in the past. So we won't do detailed checks. If it was a placement that we checked last year, that only needs a quick phone call just to make sure. So we will, as I said, check all placements. It depends on what the placement is as to the level of checking that we will do. And we'll also make sure that all medical information or any health related information that you would like to make the employer aware of, we'll also make sure that we pass that information on. And as I said, we'll just give general support. So we'll make sure that every so often we're checking in on each form group and seeing who has and who hasn't yet got their placement sorted, and then supporting them. Initially, we would like the students to do as much of that work as possible, because we feel that if we just find a placement for the student and then just give it to them, there won't really be a sense of ownership over that process, and the student won't have maybe come out of their comfort zone a little bit just to find that placement, and therefore the process is then less useful. Additional advice and guidance to support the work experience process is displayed here. Mock interviews, which I've already mentioned. Most students will not have to do an interview for their work experience placement. However, there could be one or two employers who would like to meet the students first, particularly if they're offering 2 or 3 placements. They might like to meet the students before they do that. So it's really nice to have gone through the process of understanding what an interview is like. We'll also do writing CVs in the second of the PD sessions, and most of you are already aware of this, but just a reminder that we offer one-to-one guidance. So if you would like your son or daughter to have a chat with our guidance advisor, it may well be that that's something that you want to wait until year 11. But if you would like to have that happen in year 10, we can also offer that. And now on to some frequently asked questions that might be some things that I haven't already covered in the presentation. The first one I know that I already have, but just to say again, it really doesn't matter one bit that the placement is not connected to an area that the student might be interested in. The chances are that students at this early stage haven't really given a huge amount of thought to the area of work that they want to do. So for those students, it's absolutely fine. For the other students that have 100% decided, it's important that they don't see this as a pointless task, because even if they are focused on a job area that they want to do, they can find work experience for that in year 12. But if they've gone through this process in year 10 and picked up some important valuable skills and then updated their CV, they're much more likely to then be able to get a placement in year 12 based on the depth of their CV and the skills that they've gained through this process. The next question is what to do after an employer said, yes, that's fine, we'll take a student. The answer to that is for the parent and carer to complete the online placement form. Remember, the link for that is in the letter which came out with the presentation. If you are in a situation where for lots of different reasons there aren't any family contacts that would be able to offer a placement, then the best thing to do, as I mentioned earlier, is just start with a practical search. Do jobs that are close to where you live, or a location search around the school, and that works well if you are living in St Neots, or if a student comes in on the school bus. That tends to work really well. The answer to the next question about working with parents, yes, absolutely. You can also split the week across 2 employers. So if you do have an employer who says yes, but 2 days is all that's going to work because of X, Y and Z, you can also finish the week with another employer. That's absolutely fine. If there's anything that you're concerned about with the type of work that you do, just let us know, because of course if you're the parent and carer and you are saying that you're happy with the placement, then that's okay with us. The most important thing is that you're happy with the placement. There won't be any help towards specific travel costs, so we wouldn't be able to reimburse bus fares and train fares. However, please contact me if there are any particular requests for specific expenses. There may be some support that we could give if you're already entitled to other support. So please don't write that off. It's worth sending me an email just to see if there's anything that we can do. In terms of knowing whether or not an employer can take a student, that's not your responsibility. That's obviously the employer's responsibility. So if you contact them and they say they can take a placement or offer a placement, you complete the form. We can then see who that employer is, and then we'll take that from there. And what can you do to support your son and daughter? Well, obviously general support of how important the process is, and reminding the student what they'll get out of the placement, but also any support that you can give them in just making sure that they remember where their placement is, and help them to get there on time, and support them with that basic information would be fantastic. It would be helpful to just briefly share with you types of placements and types of employers that have taken our students in the past. This is obviously just a short list, but it gives you a sense of the range of different companies. So obviously there are quite a lot of infant and junior schools, and there are also lots of nurseries in the area. They always take students from Longsands. There's an architect firm there. ABB are a digital employer. We've got Shift Momentum. They've said that they would maybe take more than one student this year. And of course there's also pubs and cafes. There's lots of those in the local area, so that just gives you a sense that it shouldn't be, and it hasn't been in the past, a problem to find employers to take our students. We've got lots of students in year 10, but we're always successful in placing them all, so there's plenty of support there. And finally then, other things that you can help, other ways that you can support. First of all, just trying to make sure that that document I mentioned with the placement form is in on time, and anything you can do to just encourage your son or daughter to start that process of brainstorming so that they can find their placement. It's better to get that done as soon as possible. There's certainly not a major rush, and I don't mean to put any pressure on, but if they can get that sorted fairly soon after Christmas, that would be fantastic. Try to engage with them where possible by checking their CV. As I said, they are going to do that on Unifrog, so you should be able to have a look at that with them after they've logged in. They'll also be having their mock interview, which you can talk to them about as well. Also, just reiterate the key messages really about the value of work experience, and what I said earlier about it's not about trying to find a placement in the job that you want to do. A lot of students won't know what they want to do, but they'll still need in that first job that they apply for to show some sense of skills and experience of the workplace. So this is a fantastic opportunity to get that. If you can help with travel arrangements to the placements, then that would be fantastic, but I appreciate that that's not always possible for many reasons. And finally, if for that week you can just avoid obviously holidays, but also other commitments, sometimes it's not possible, but other appointments, if possible, to avoid during that process and book it at another time. I appreciate again that that's not always possible, but where possible, if you can do that, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation. I do hope that that's answered most of your questions and maybe sort of helped to put your mind at ease that it's not an overly burdensome process for you. The main thing really is the placement form in terms of what's required for you to actually complete. We'll make sure at this end that we're getting the students ready and giving them a kind of chivvy on to get their placement found and secure. Just to reiterate the contact details which I've put on the screen, and we'll update the Academy website, the section on work experience. We'll make sure that everything apart from the link to the placement form, because obviously we want that only to be sent to parents and carers, but all of the other information, including the timeline and a link to the Health and Safety Executive website, will be on the Academy's website. Thank you very much.